Hey Ivan, it's Shelby. This is me recording my video for the corporate governance failure. So you're just gonna have to imagine I'm standing in front of the class and speaking. So if this were my presentation in front of the class, I would have opened up with the video of Ron Howard singing the Wells Fargo Wagon song from The Music Man because my paper was about the Wells Fargo scandal. And that song was stuck in my head this entire time. If it was going to be stuck in my head, I wanted it to be stuck in everybody's head because that was fair. Um, I don't know how to put the song in this video, but the reason I bring it up is because I feel like that that song really helps round out the perception people have of Wells Fargo because the bank has been around since 1850 and it's been an American institution and it's one of the largest and most powerful banks in this country, which makes the scandal in 2016 all the worse because of what happened. It's not a surprise to me or my family. In To share a personal note, in sorry, when I was 10, my parents were buying a house, and because they were going through so many credit checks and background checks, my mom's identity got stolen because they were in a very vulnerable position. And the person who stole the identity was able to rack up these insane charges. And their bank was able to work with them and reverse the charges and cancel it, and it was okay. But our Wells Fargo was the one bank that was really difficult to work with and really screwed over a lot of people because I was a Girl Scout at the time, and we had a corporate account, which a bunch of nonprofits have, and we had just deposited all this money from cookie sales into that account. And when you want to make a withdrawal from a corporate Wells Fargo account, you're supposed to have a specific check. It's supposed to have two signatures, and there's supposed to be all these checks before any money gets taken out. But this thief had faulty checks, faulty address, wrong account numbers, wrote money to retrieve it from the account. People at Wells Fargo saw the name Debbie Jurikil's, my mom's name, matched it to this other account with totally different information and just gave the money away. So that is a very early example of a failure of them to follow their own controls. I mean, that's a whole separate paper. Long story short, the money did get returned. Girl Scouts of America got involved and they fixed it. But all this to say, we weren't so surprised. The more I did research, the less surprised I got and the more sickened I got. So in 2016, the scandal broke that Wells Fargo employees at branches had been opening faulty accounts and multiple accounts for employees without their knowledge or their consent. So people had all these extra credit cards. If you were pre approved for a credit card, employees just signed you up for it. People had as many as six accounts, not knowing. Money from a primary account was put in these additional accounts that they didn't know existed. And then because the original account no longer had the appropriate minimum balance, people were getting hit with fees. So people were being charged for accounts they never signed up for in the first place. When the scandal broke out, leadership went before Congress, the SEC got involved, executives got subpoenaed, and John Stumpf, the CEO at the time, went before Congress to testify. He kept saying that there was no intention to create a scandal, but through the interview and through the proceedings, it seemed like he didn't even know what was going on. And other VPs would say, "Oh, I had no idea this kind of wrongdoing was happening," which does not make it okay. And it pointed to this larger issue of a toxic culture in Wells Fargo's workplace. They had, like, leadership came up with this initiative that that people who worked at the banks should be selling 8 accounts per household, which was up from 3 accounts. It was called the GER 8 initiative because it rhymed, and that was the reasoning that went into it. So people were falsifying accounts because they were put under all this pressure. You had workers coming in on Saturdays and Sundays. There were notices that if you didn't make goals, if you failed to make goals for 2 months, you were fired. People were, they were, people who worked at the individual branches were getting pulled into meetings like 3 times a day to be told how much they needed to make these quotas. And they were told, if you can't succeed here, you're just going to wind up at McDonald's. And it was this really toxic situation and environment. And people were struggling to make that work. People called the hotline to report problems because many people felt that it wasn't right. There are cases of people getting terminated within weeks, months, the year of reporting wrongdoing, which is a prime example of retaliation, which is illegal. All this came to light in 2016. All of this was getting unearthed. Wells Fargo has had to pay billions of dollars in fines. The CEO, Stumpf, and Tolstat, who they were executives at the time. Tolstat was in charge of the banking, and a lot of these issues, the buck stopped with her. So people have been pointing the finger at her and Stumpf for not saying it sooner. They've both stepped down. They've both have forfeited their salaries. Stumpf forfeited a number of his stocks. I want to say all of his stocks, and to provide some sort of restitution for the customers that are losing money. And the company is also working on changing their culture. So this isn't part of their MO. It's unclear if they're trying to make changes. It's unclear if those changes are being successful. They've hired a third party to go into cases of retaliation because it is pretty clear that that's what happened. They are making sure that Wells Fargo is complying with the SEC. The SEC has come down and said that the company is no longer allowed to grow in assets until they can make changes to fix the mistakes and the problems that they've caused. So this third party is supposed to be following the leadership to make sure that they're complying with the SEC. As of February, they had 60 days, so they should be coming out with steps to fix their wrongdoing at any point now. So as the days unfold, we should start to see some steps to change things. They've already removed some of their board members, and they've added new people. So they're hoping that that leads to change. The new CEO, Tim Sloan, has been working on improving this. He's been going in front of news channels. He's been going before Congress to testify that they're changing things, that they're adjusting their culture, that they're working on it. Some employees are unsure. A lot of lawmakers are unsure. I think people are right to be unsure. I mean, it's tricky because now they're in the cleanup phase of the scandal, and a lot of information is still coming out. A lot of articles that I saw in the beginning of my research said that it was 2 million false accounts. In later articles I read from NPR and the New York Times, they said it was 3 million. So there's so much that is still being revealed, and there's still so much that still has to be fixed. And it's unclear how Wells Fargo will be able to redeem themselves and go back to being that proud American institution that Richie Cunningham could sing about in a musical. Um, but that is everything I learned. It was horrifying. It was enlightening. Thank you for making me learn all of this because I now know what not to do because a lot of these leaders just buried their heads in the sand is what it seems like, and they decentralized themselves, and they just put out this ambitious business strategy and then let people figure it out and then got mad if people couldn't figure it out. So there's a lot to learn about culture and goal setting and how you can combine the two. But thank you, and I hope you're doing okay. I was sad that we couldn't see you on Monday, and I hope you and your family are doing okay. And I'm sending my thoughts and good feelings to you. Thanks.